I wanted to bring up the topic of good and welfare. I know our ordinance right now is currently written that the it's not to ever be more than 1 hour, but we haven't consistently enforced that for the last few for the last few years that I've been on council at least. And so I'd like to consider or have a discussion in public about whether or not we consider changing that ordinance. I asked Scott Salmon to look at the ordinance and the history of the ordinance, and honestly, there's been so many versions of how of good and welfare and how it's been run. There was one iteration where the council would agree at 9 o'clock to stop whatever they were doing and have good and welfare so they could hear from the public. And then after all the members of the public spoke, they would close off good and welfare and then go back to business as usual. And so I think it would be worthy for us to have a discussion about how we want good and welfare to look going forward. I think folks were very disappointed at the last meeting when we cut it off at an hour. And there were 18 people still left wanting to speak. And so I thought it would be worth a discussion.
Anyone else on council? Ms. Belcher?
I would agree with Deputy Mayor G that it is vitally important that we hear from our residents, Mr. Mayor. I think on previous councils, they have many times expressed or made a motion to extend good and welfare. I feel as if that's one of the very reasons why we're sitting here as representatives of our community is to hear our community. So I think giving 3 minutes to each resident that wants to speak, be it by Zoom or be it in person, is reasonable. I believe that it's important also, I think, which was kind of difficult at the last meeting, is that the weather was very bad. And I know that a lot of residents don't like to drive in when we have inclement weather. So I feel as if, extending good and welfare is a reasonable thing to do.
Thank you, Ms. Belcher. Anyone else? Ms. Morgan?
Yep, I have a few problems. First, I don't like when we do the business of the town after 11 o'clock at night. I feel like we're limiting ourselves to what we can discuss, and that's when we pay the bills, and that's when we introduce the ordinances. And so the meetings that we had that were going on and on and on, where after midnight we were finally getting to the work of the town, would not work for me at all. I think there would need to be some, I don't even know that I'm okay with actually putting something into practice. I feel like it would depend on, for me, the tone of the evening, how the evening's going, and a lot of the meetings lately have been incredibly aggressive. And I don't think that prolonging good and welfare at those meetings is beneficial to anybody in the town. I think it doesn't allow cooler heads to prevail, and allows a lot of anger to come forward. So I like that we have the hour, that's the rule, and we have the ability to extend it. But I'm not in favor of, at this point, with the way things are, just voting to extend it indefinitely until everybody who's ready to speak speaks.
Anyone else on council? I'm glad you guys brought this up. Sometimes good and welfare is an hour, sometimes 2, sometimes 3. But I'm open to looking into other ways to address good and welfare. Go ahead.
I think there's a problem when we inconsistently enforce the 1 hour rule. It begs the question why on some days we enforce it, some days we don't, especially the last council meeting when it wasn't an issue of a time constraint. It was fairly early in the meeting where we decided to cut it to an hour. So I think that's one problem. I think the other issue, I just want to be clear, if we cut it to an hour and everyone takes their maximum of 3 minutes, that means only 20 people get to speak. And if we split that virtual and in person, that means only 10 of you sitting in the room would be allowed to speak. And so I think that's problematic. I think people come out here, they leave their homes, they want to talk to us. This is their only opportunity to be heard. We should let them be heard. I hear you, Karen. It's been extremely rough these past couple of weeks, and some of the things that I've heard I wish we could mute. And I understand that some of it is very triggering and hurtful, but we wear these hats for a reason. We were elected into these seats for a reason, and we have to listen. If there's any hate speech or anything disrespectful, we cut it off. And I think we address it at the time, but I think we have to listen to our residents. And so I just want to say to the public, I anticipate that we may not extend good and welfare past an hour tonight. And so I actually beg you not to take the full 3 minutes so we can hear from as many people as possible. So if you can keep your points quick and sweet tonight, it'll get a lot more people to speak tonight.
Anyone else?
I just want to comment on the 3 minutes. I've stood up on that podium many times. 3 minutes is tough, and people prepared their speeches, and I don't think it's fair to ask someone on the spot. I know the Board of Ed did it, to cut their time when they might have prepared something. I've been there myself right there, and you time it to make sure that you're getting everything in. So I don't think that's fair.
Thank you for that, Councilwoman Goldberg. Would you be willing to extend the meeting past an hour tonight so that people can have their full 3 minutes and everyone can speak?
I'm not answering that right.
We can address that when we get to the moment. Ms. Belcher, I think I saw you pulling the microphone towards yourself.
I think that here again, some residents like to send emails, okay? But some residents like to be heard verbally. And I think there's something to be said about, being here and hearing from our residents. People want to come, they want to look at you in the eyes, and they want to tell you what's on their mind. And I anticipate, I have no problem sitting here. Most of the time since I've been here, meetings to midnight hasn't been problematic for me. I feel as if that's what it takes to hear from every resident that wants to speak, then I'm willing to do it.